It was an ordinary day for most people in the royal city. The sun shone brightly, casting a golden glow over the bustling streets. People hurried through the markets, buying fresh produce and chatting with one another. The royal palace, perched majestically on a hill, stood as a symbol of power and tradition. It was a place that many dreamed of visiting, but few ever got the chance to see. The gates were usually closed to all, but the most important figures in the kingdom. Yet today, something special was about to happen. In a small, humble house on the outskirts of the city, a family was preparing for an event that would change their lives. Inside the house, the air was filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. A young child, around 8 years old, sat by the window, staring at the far-off palace. The child, named Liam, had always dreamed of visiting the royal palace. Liam wasn't like most children. He was born with special needs, which made it harder for him to do things that other kids his age could. His world was smaller than most, confined to his family's home and the nearby park where he liked to play. Despite the challenges he faced, Liam always had a spark of curiosity and a heart full of dreams. His parents, Maria and David, looked at each other with a mixture of joy and worry. They had just received an unexpected invitation from the royal palace. The letter was simple but powerful. It invited Liam, along with his family, to attend a royal event meant to raise awareness and offer a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to children from all walks of life. For a child like Liam, this was a dream come true. But for Maria and David, it was a little more complicated. They knew the palace was a grand, formal place, full of people with high expectations. They worried about how Liam would react to such a different environment, and whether he would feel out of place or overwhelmed. Still, they couldn't deny the excitement in their hearts. This was a chance that few people would ever get. Maria gently helped Liam get dressed, choosing a simple but nice outfit for him. He wore a blue shirt, his favorite color, and a pair of soft trousers that his mother had carefully picked out. As she buttoned up his shirt, she smiled at him, trying to ease his nerves. "Are you excited, sweetie?" she asked softly. Liam nodded, his wide eyes filled with wonder. He had no idea exactly what to expect, but he could sense that this was something special. David, meanwhile, paced around the small living room, adjusting his tie nervously. He didn't want to admit it, but he was anxious too. Not because of the royal palace, but because he wasn't sure how Liam would react to the large crowd, the formal atmosphere, or all the new faces. He had seen how Liam sometimes struggled in busy places, and he didn't want his son to feel uncomfortable or left out. But this was a chance for Liam to see the world beyond their small neighborhood, to experience something grand that would stay with him forever. Once the family was ready, they stepped outside to find a small carriage waiting for them. A royal driver, dressed in fine attire, greeted them with a warm smile. He helped them into the carriage, and they began the journey to the palace. As they traveled through the city, Liam pressed his face against the window, marveling at the sights. He had never been this far from home before, and everything seemed so new and exciting. The grand buildings, the crowded streets, the people bustling about. It was like a whole new world outside his little bubble. Maria held Liam's hand, trying to comfort him, while David looked out the window, lost in thought. He couldn't help but wonder if they had made the right decision. It wasn't every day that you got invited to the royal palace, but at what cost? Would Liam be okay in such a formal setting? Would he feel like he belonged? The closer they got to the palace, the more the tension built. The magnificent structure stood tall in the distance, its golden spires glinting in the sunlight. Liam's eyes widened with awe as they neared the gates. The palace was even more beautiful than he had imagined. He had only seen pictures of it before, but now he was about to walk through those gates and step into a place that most people could only dream of. The royal palace, with its towering walls, perfectly manicured gardens, and sparkling fountains, seemed like something out of a fairy tale. But to Liam, it felt like a world far beyond his reach. As the carriage came to a stop in front of the palace gates, Maria took a deep breath, feeling both nervous and excited. This was it. Their lives were about to change, and Liam was going to have an experience that he would remember for the rest of his life. The palace guards stood at attention, their tall figures making them seem like giants in the eyes of the family. They wore regal uniforms with shiny armor that reflected the sunlight, and their eyes were focused and unwavering. It was intimidating at first, but Liam felt a sense of awe rather than fear. These were the people who protected the palace, the ones who kept the kingdom safe. For the first time, Liam felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. The family took their first steps inside the palace, and everything felt overwhelming. The grand chandeliers, the beautiful paintings on the walls, and the noise of the crowd made it hard for Liam to take it all in. But despite everything being new and a little scary, Liam couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement building inside him. This was the moment he had always dreamed of. He was here, in the royal palace, surrounded by people who were there to celebrate him and other children like him. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of a day that would leave a lasting impact on everyone in the palace, especially the royal guards. The moment the family stepped through the grand gates of the royal palace, they were immediately greeted by the sight of an entirely different world. The palace grounds stretched out before them like a dream come true. The flowers in the gardens were in full bloom, their colors vibrant against the lush greenery. The pathways, lined with statues of ancient heroes, led the family through the gates and into a world they had only ever seen in books and movies. Liam's eyes were wide with wonder as he looked around, his face lighting up with excitement. The sheer size of the palace was overwhelming. Every step they took was surrounded by opulence and beauty, from the tall marble columns that rose high into the sky to the delicate fountains that glistened in the sunlight. The palace was a place of splendor, a place that felt like it was too magnificent to be real. Maria held Liam's hand gently, trying to keep him calm. The child had always been sensitive to large crowds and new places, and Maria was worried about how he would adjust to the formality of the event. She could tell that Liam was a little anxious, but the excitement in his eyes told her that he was ready for this experience. She whispered soothing words to him as they made their way through the palace grounds. David, walking beside them, couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. He had never imagined that one day he and his family would be walking through the royal palace. As a child, he had dreamed of the palace, but never thought it would be something his own son would experience. It was hard to believe that they had been invited to such an exclusive event. This wasn't just a regular visit. It was a day to celebrate children like Liam, who had faced struggles that others couldn't fully understand. David was proud of his son, and the invitation to the palace felt like an acknowledgement of the bravery Liam showed every day. As they continued to walk through the grounds, they saw other families arriving, each one dressed in their best attire. The palace staff, who were also dressed in elegant uniforms, helped guide the guests and offered warm greetings. The family could see that everyone was part of something important. Still, there was a part of David that felt nervous. He wasn't sure how Liam would react to all of the attention. He had always been a quiet and reserved child, not used to being in such a public setting. The idea of so many strangers watching him made David uneasy, though he hoped that the kindness of the royal guards and staff would help put Liam at ease. Suddenly, a royal guard, tall and standing with perfect posture, approached them. His uniform was polished to perfection, with gold accents that gleamed in the sun. The guard's face was calm and serious, yet there was something warm about his eyes when he looked down at Liam. His voice, when he spoke, was kind but firm. "Welcome to the palace," the guard said with a gentle bow. "You are most welcome here." Liam, wide-eyed and a little overwhelmed, looked up at the guard. His heart pounded in his chest, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for the man in front of him. The royal guard wasn't like anyone he had ever met. He looked like someone who belonged in a world of legends, yet here he was, standing right in front of him, offering kindness without a hint of arrogance. The guard didn't seem at all bothered by the child's wide stare. Instead, he knelt down slightly, lowering himself to be at eye level with Liam. "Would you like to see how we stand tall like guards?" he asked with a smile that reached his eyes. Liam's face lit up with surprise, and for a moment, all his anxiety melted away. He had expected the guards to be serious, maybe even a little scary, but this guard was different. He was showing Liam that they were just people too. He gently took Liam's hand and showed him how to stand with straight shoulders, tall like the palace guards. The family watched, stunned by the guard's actions. David felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had been worried that Liam might feel out of place, but in that moment, the royal guard had made Liam feel like he was part of something. It wasn't just the palace or the royal family that mattered, but the kindness and humanity of the people around him. As Liam tried to stand tall like the guard, he giggled, and his parents couldn't help but smile at the sight. It was the first time that day that they saw Liam so relaxed and happy. The royal guard seemed pleased with Liam's attempt, giving him a gentle pat on the back. "You're doing great," the guard said, making Liam blush with pride. The family continued on their journey through the palace, but now something had shifted in the air. The tension that had been hanging over them seemed to disappear. Liam was no longer nervous or uncertain. The moment with the guard had given him confidence, and he began to look at the palace with fresh eyes. It wasn't just a place of grandeur. It was a place where kindness could be found in even the most unexpected places. The royal guards, typically seen as symbols of power and strength, were showing a side that few got to see. It was a reminder that behind the polished armor and formal uniforms, there were people with hearts full of warmth and generosity. The day was just beginning, but already it was clear that this would be an experience Liam and his family would never forget. As they continued walking, the family was joined by other guests, each of them sharing in the same sense of wonder and excitement. It was clear that the palace was not just a symbol of wealth and power, but a place of connection, compassion, and inclusion. The kindness of the royal guards was just the beginning of a day that would change Liam's life, and the lives of everyone who witnessed it. The family continued walking through the royal palace, the sound of their footsteps echoing on the smooth marble floors. Liam's heart was racing with excitement. Everything around him was so grand, so beautiful, that he could hardly take it all in. The high ceilings seemed to stretch forever, and the chandeliers overhead sparkled like thousands of tiny stars. He had never seen anything like it before. The grand tapestries that hung on the walls told stories of ancient kings and queens, their faces serious and proud, but somehow distant. Yet the palace didn't feel like a place of distance or coldness. Instead, it was warm, inviting, full of life. As they made their way down the long corridor, Liam noticed that everyone seemed to be in a hurry. The guests were arriving in small groups, wearing their best clothes. Some were talking excitedly, while others appeared more serious, trying to stay composed in such a formal setting. But through it all, Liam felt a sense of belonging. It was as if the palace was no longer a world far away, but a place where he could feel at home, just for this one day. The royal guard, who had greeted them earlier, was walking beside them now. He seemed to be guiding them through the maze of rooms and halls with ease. His presence was calm and reassuring, and it made Liam feel safe. Every time the guard spoke to them, his voice was kind and clear, making it easy to understand the schedule and what they could expect next. It was clear that he was used to interacting with guests of all backgrounds, but there was something different in the way he spoke to Liam. He wasn't just doing his job. He seemed genuinely interested in making the child feel comfortable. As they reached the end of the hall, they arrived at the main ballroom. It was even more magnificent than anything Liam had imagined. The room was enormous, with windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, letting in the soft, golden light of the afternoon sun. The floor was made of polished wood, and the walls were lined with more paintings, each one more intricate and beautiful than the last. The air was filled with the hum of conversation and the soft music of a live orchestra playing in the background. The whole room felt alive, like a grand celebration of life itself. But despite the beauty of the space, Liam's attention was drawn to something even more extraordinary. As they entered the ballroom, the royal guards who had been stationed near the doors turned to greet them. They were tall, standing at attention with their weapons by their sides, their armor gleaming in the light. But this time, their expressions weren't cold or distant. They smiled warmly at Liam as he walked by, their faces softening when they saw him. It was as if they were welcoming him into their world, not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged. Liam's eyes widened in surprise. He had never imagined that someone so important, someone who had the duty of guarding the palace, could be so kind, so gentle. The guards weren't just standing there as statues. They were real people, showing warmth and kindness to everyone who passed by. It made Liam feel like he was part of something special, something much bigger than himself. One of the guards, noticing Liam's awe, stepped forward and knelt down in front of him. He looked directly at Liam, his eyes full of kindness. "Would you like to see how we stand like the royal guards?" he asked. His voice was gentle, as though he was speaking to a friend, not just a guest. Liam's face lit up. He had never expected such a gesture. The guard extended his hand to help Liam stand tall, showing him how to straighten his back and raise his chin. Liam copied the movements, trying his best to stand just like the guard. His parents watched, both surprised and grateful for the kindness the guard was showing their son. The other guards nearby smiled as they watched the interaction. One of them gave a small nod of approval, as if to say, "You're doing great." For a moment, it was as if the formality of the royal setting had faded away, replaced by a genuine moment of connection between a child and the people who served to protect the kingdom. David, standing just behind Liam, couldn't help but feel a lump in his throat. The kindness the royal guards had shown his son was something he never could have expected. He had feared that Liam would feel out of place, that the palace would be too overwhelming. But here, among the royal guards, Liam was treated with respect and warmth. It was something David would never forget. Maria, too, felt a sense of relief. She had been nervous about how Liam would respond to the crowd, but now she could see how well he was adapting. He was smiling, laughing, and clearly enjoying the attention from the royal guards. The guards had made Liam feel like he was part of the day's celebration, not just an outsider looking in. After a few moments, the guard helped Liam to stand tall once more, and they continued into the ballroom. As they walked, Liam glanced up at his parents, his eyes filled with excitement and pride. For the first time since they arrived, he felt confident. He felt like he belonged in this grand, beautiful space. The rest of the guests who had arrived looked on, some with smiles on their faces, others nodding in appreciation of the kindness Liam had received. The royal guards, normally seen as stoic and serious, had shown everyone a different side of themselves. They had reached out to a child who had never expected to be noticed, let alone treated with such care. Liam's heart swelled with happiness as he continued walking with his parents. The royal palace, which had once seemed so intimidating, now felt like a place where kindness and connection could be found. The kindness of the guards had made all the difference. It was a moment that would stay with Liam forever, a moment where he felt like he truly mattered, not just to his family, but to everyone around him. The royal guards had not just welcomed a child into their midst, they had shown everyone that kindness could be found in the most unexpected places, even in the heart of a palace. It was a lesson that Liam would carry with him always. The warmth from the royal guards' kindness seemed to fill the entire ballroom, making the palace feel more inviting than ever before. Liam walked alongside his parents, his steps growing more confident with each moment. The feeling of awe that had initially overwhelmed him was now replaced by a quiet joy. Everywhere he looked, there was something new to see. The grand chandeliers above cast soft, golden light across the room, while the elegant decorations made the space feel like a place from a dream. Guests mingled, talking with one another in low voices. Some of them looked at Liam and his family, but it wasn't the kind of look that made them feel uncomfortable. Instead, it was more like curiosity and admiration. The family had been invited to this special event because of their child, and there was a sense of appreciation in the air for everyone who had come. Liam felt a little nervous as he realized that people were looking at him, but the earlier kindness from the guards made him feel more at ease. It was as if he belonged here, in this grand space, just like everyone else. As they moved deeper into the ballroom, Liam's attention was drawn to a small table near the center of the room. It was covered with colorful books, each one more beautiful than the last. The books seemed to tell stories of faraway lands, legendary heroes, and great adventures. Liam's eyes widened with excitement as he stepped closer to the table. He loved stories, whether they were told through books, pictures, or even the small tales his mother and father told him at bedtime. Stories always had a way of capturing his imagination, and this table looked like a treasure chest full of them. Maria noticed where Liam's attention had gone and smiled warmly. "Would you like to pick out a book?" she asked, her voice soft and encouraging. Liam nodded eagerly. He could hardly wait to find the one that would take him on an adventure in his mind. David, standing close by, was still amazed at how well Liam was handling everything. He had been so worried that his son would feel out of place in such a big formal event. But Liam was handling it so well, moving from one moment to the next with such curiosity and wonder. The royal guards had made him feel welcome, and the event was starting to feel like something truly special. While Liam explored the books, a royal attendant walked over to them. She was dressed in a gown of royal blue, and her presence added to the elegance of the room. She smiled at the family with a warm, welcoming expression. "It's such a pleasure to have you here today," she said, her voice gentle and kind. "Please feel free to make yourselves comfortable. There will be a special activity for the children shortly, and we would love for Liam to join us." Liam's face lit up with excitement. He had never been to a royal event before, and the idea of participating in a special activity made the day even more thrilling. He glanced up at his parents, seeking permission. Maria nodded with a smile, her heart swelling with pride. "Go ahead, sweetie," she encouraged. "Enjoy yourself." David, still trying to take it all in, gave a small nod as well. He was touched by the kindness of the palace staff. It wasn't just the grand surroundings or the royal decorations that made the event special. It was the way everyone, from the guards to the attendants, made Liam feel valued and included. It was something he hadn't expected, and it filled him with gratitude. Liam's excitement was contagious. He quickly joined the group of children who were gathering in one corner of the ballroom. The children were all excited, their laughter and chatter filling the air. Liam looked around and felt a little nervous again, but the memory of the royal guard's smile and the kind words of the attendants gave him the confidence to take a step forward. As he walked into the group, one of the children, a girl about his age, smiled at him. She reached out her hand to him, and Liam took it shyly, his nervousness fading a little. The activity they would be doing was simple, but it felt like an adventure to Liam. The children were asked to form small teams, and each team had to work together to solve a fun puzzle. It was a way to encourage teamwork and creativity, and it felt like a perfect fit for a group of young children. Liam joined a team with the girl who had introduced herself as Sophia, along with two other children. They sat at a table with brightly colored pieces of a large jigsaw puzzle spread out in front of them. At first, Liam wasn't sure how to help. The puzzle was tricky, with pieces that didn't seem to fit right away. But Sophia encouraged him, showing him how to look for the edges and corners. Slowly, Liam started to understand how the puzzle pieces worked together. As they worked together, the other children shared ideas, and Liam began to feel a sense of accomplishment. His team was making progress, and the feeling of teamwork made him smile. He wasn't just participating in the activity. He was part of something, a team working toward a goal. David and Maria watched from a distance, their hearts full of joy as they saw their son engage so happily with the other children. The worries they had when they first arrived seemed to fade away with each passing minute. They had been concerned about how Liam would feel in such an unfamiliar environment, but it was clear now that the kindness he had been shown had made a difference. Liam was thriving in this new setting, and the palace was no longer just a place of grand buildings and high ceilings. It had become a place where Liam felt welcome, where he could learn and play, and most importantly, where he was seen and valued. The puzzle came together slowly but surely, and when it was finally completed, Liam's team cheered with excitement. They had worked together, and the sense of pride in their accomplishment was clear on their faces. For Liam, the victory wasn't just in completing the puzzle, it was in realizing that he was capable of more than he had thought, and that he belonged in this beautiful, exciting place. As the group of children gathered around to show off their completed puzzle, the royal attendants applauded their efforts. The sound of clapping filled the air, and Liam's face flushed with pride. He wasn't just a guest at the palace anymore. He was part of the celebration, part of the joy and excitement that filled the ballroom. In that moment, Liam knew that this was a day he would never forget. The activity with the puzzle had been a success, and Liam was still beaming with pride. As he walked away from the table with his new friends, he felt a sense of accomplishment that he had never quite experienced before. The sense of teamwork and the joy of completing the puzzle had filled him with a newfound confidence. It was as if, for the first time in his life, he felt like he truly belonged in the world around him. The other children were still excited, talking amongst themselves about how fun the activity had been. Some were discussing the pieces of the puzzle, while others were looking forward to what came next. For Liam, it wasn't just about the puzzle. It was about the feeling of being part of something bigger than himself, something important. He had never imagined that a day at the royal palace would bring him such happiness, and yet here he was, surrounded by people who treated him like he was just as important as anyone else. As the children slowly dispersed, a few of them went off to join their parents or continue exploring the palace. Liam stayed close to his parents, but he could see that the event was far from over. There was still more to experience, more to see, and more to learn. He was eager to see what else the day would bring. David and Maria watched their son from a distance, both feeling a deep sense of pride and gratitude. They had worried that the event might be overwhelming for Liam, but now they could see that he was not just coping, he was thriving. His eyes sparkled with curiosity, and his steps were light, full of joy. Maria couldn't help but smile as she watched Liam. She had seen him struggle before, but today, in the warmth of the palace, and with the kindness of the royal guards and staff, he seemed like a different child. He was growing, and she couldn't be prouder. "Look at him," Maria whispered to David, her voice filled with emotion. "He's so happy. I didn't think he'd adjust so well." David smiled softly, his eyes focused on Liam as he moved through the crowd. "Neither did I. But look at him now. It's like he's found his place here." Just as they were talking, one of the royal attendants approached them. She was smiling, her eyes full of warmth. "We have something special planned for the children," she said kindly. "Would you and your son like to join us for a short walk through the royal gardens? It's a peaceful place, and we think it would be a nice way for everyone to unwind after the puzzle activity." Liam looked up at his parents, his excitement palpable. "Can we, Mom? Dad?" he asked, his voice filled with enthusiasm. Maria nodded and smiled. "Of course, sweetheart. It sounds wonderful." David agreed as well, eager to see how the gardens might be a relaxing experience for Liam. The royal gardens were known for their beauty, a place where people could find peace and inspiration. They had heard stories about the gardens, with their colorful flowers, fountains, and quiet paths that wound through lush greenery. It seemed like the perfect way to let Liam relax and enjoy the beauty of the palace grounds. The family followed the attendant as she led them out of the ballroom and into a nearby corridor. The sound of soft footsteps echoed as they moved through the palace. It felt almost like they were walking through a dream. So much beauty around them, and yet it was also calming and serene. When they reached the doors to the royal gardens, Liam's eyes widened in wonder. He had never seen anything like it. The gardens were like something out of a fairy tale. Tall trees lined the paths, their branches stretching high above, creating a canopy of shade. Colorful flowers of all kinds, roses, daisies, tulips, were in full bloom, their bright petals filling the air with a sweet fragrance. The sound of birds singing in the trees added to the peaceful atmosphere, and the gentle sound of water flowing from a nearby fountain made everything feel even more serene. Liam took a deep breath, his face lighting up with a smile. "It's so pretty," he exclaimed, his voice full of awe. Maria and David shared a look of happiness as they saw their son so at ease. The beauty of the gardens, combined with the gentle breeze and the peaceful surroundings, had clearly made an impression on him. He walked ahead a little, exploring the paths with the curiosity of a child who was seeing something magical for the first time. The royal attendant, seeing how much Liam was enjoying the gardens, smiled warmly. "Feel free to take your time," she said. "The gardens are here for everyone to enjoy. There's no rush." As they wandered deeper into the gardens, Liam spotted a small bench beneath a tall tree. It looked like the perfect spot to sit and rest, so he motioned to his parents. They made their way over to the bench, and Liam sat down, his eyes still taking in everything around him. He was completely at peace, feeling as if time had slowed down just for him. Maria sat next to him, gently placing her hand on his shoulder. "You like it here, don't you?" she asked, her voice soft. Liam nodded, a huge smile on his face. "It's like a dream," he whispered. "It's so quiet and peaceful." David sat on the other side of Liam, his hand resting on his son's knee. He couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment as he looked at Liam, who seemed so happy in this moment. All the worries and doubts that had clouded David's mind earlier in the day now seemed so far away. Liam was flourishing here, and that was all that mattered. He had found a place where he could truly be himself, freed from judgment or expectation. As the family relaxed on the bench, the royal attendant left them to explore the gardens at their own pace. The soft sounds of the water flowing from the fountains and the distant laughter of the other children made the day feel like a dream. Liam, now feeling completely comfortable, continued to look around with wide eyes, taking in every detail. He was amazed at how everything seemed so perfect, so carefully arranged to bring beauty and peace to everyone who visited. For the first time, Liam truly felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. And in that moment, the royal palace and its magnificent gardens became more than just a place. It became a home for the day, a place where kindness and beauty worked together to create something unforgettable. As Liam and his parents continued to wander through the royal gardens, it felt like time had slowed down, allowing them to truly appreciate the peacefulness around them. The gentle breeze rustled through the leaves of the trees, and the colorful flowers swayed softly in the wind. It was a perfect moment of calm in the midst of the excitement of the day. Liam, still sitting on the bench, looked around with wide eyes. He was captivated by the beauty of the space, the flowers, the birds, the fountains, and even the sunlight streaming through the branches above. He felt like he had stepped into a magical world, far away from the busy city he was used to. It was a place where everything seemed to be in harmony, and he couldn't help but feel incredibly lucky to be there. Maria and David sat beside him, their hearts full as they watched their son's amazement. They had been so nervous about how Liam would react to such a grand place, but here he was, completely at ease. His excitement and joy were contagious, making them feel as if they were experiencing the beauty of the palace and gardens through his eyes. They were no longer just visitors to the royal grounds. They were part of the magic too. The kindness of the royal guards, the gentle treatment from the attendants, and the calmness of the surroundings had made all the difference. As they relaxed on the bench, they were joined by a couple of other families who had also come to enjoy the gardens. The children from these families, like Liam, were playing near the fountains, chasing each other and laughing. It was a wonderful sight to see. The children, free to be themselves, enjoying the day without a care in the world. Their laughter filled the air, blending with the sounds of the birds and the rustling leaves. The royal attendants moved quietly around the gardens, ensuring that everything was running smoothly. They smiled at the children, chatting with the parents, and offering words of kindness to everyone they passed. The atmosphere was warm and welcoming, and it felt like the entire palace had been transformed into a space for joy and relaxation. As Liam sat on the bench, enjoying the peace of the moment, a familiar figure approached. It was one of the royal guards, the same one who had shown Liam how to stand tall earlier in the day. He was still wearing his polished uniform, his posture as perfect as ever, but his face was soft with a gentle smile. "Hello, Liam." The guard greeted him warmly, his voice carrying a kind tone that made Liam feel like they were old friends. "How are you enjoying the gardens?" Liam looked up at the guard, his eyes still wide with wonder. "It's amazing," he said, his voice full of excitement. "It's so beautiful here. I never imagined it would be like this." The guard nodded, his smile widening. "I'm glad you like it. The gardens are one of the best parts of the palace. They were designed to be a place of peace and reflection, where people can come to relax and enjoy nature." Liam smiled back, feeling a sense of connection to the guard. It was a strange feeling. Here he was, in the royal palace, talking to a guard who was usually seen as a figure of authority. But today, the guard wasn't just a soldier. He was someone who cared about Liam's experience and wanted to make him feel comfortable. The kindness the guard had shown earlier in the day had made a huge impact on Liam. It wasn't just the grand palace or the beautiful gardens that had made the day special. It was the people, the way they treated Liam with such warmth and respect. The guard, seeing how much Liam was enjoying the gardens, sat down on a nearby stone bench. "Would you like to hear a story about the palace?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with a playful glint. "It's a story I've heard many times, and I think you'll like it." Liam's eyes lit up. He loved stories, especially ones about places like the palace. He nodded eagerly, motioning for the guard to begin. "Well," the guard began, "there's an old tale about the royal family and how they built the palace so many years ago. The legend says that the very first king of this land, King Alden, had a vision of a palace that would not only be a symbol of strength and power, but also a place where everyone, no matter who they were, could feel welcome. He wanted the palace to reflect the beauty of nature and the kindness of the people." Liam listened intently, his attention completely focused on the guard's words. The guard continued, sharing the story of how King Alden had invited people from all walks of life to help build the palace. Craftsmen, gardeners, artists, and even children had come to lend their skills, and the palace became a symbol of unity, kindness, and beauty. The king believed that a palace built with kindness would last forever. The guard said, his voice softening, and he was right. The palace still stands, not just as a place of power, but as a place where everyone is welcome, just like you are today. Liam's eyes widened as he absorbed the story. It was so much more than just a tale about a building. It was about the values of kindness, unity, and making the space where everyone, no matter their background, could feel at home. It was a message that Liam could understand deeply. He had experienced it today, in the warmth of the guard's smiles and the kindness of the attendants. He realized that the royal palace wasn't just about its grandeur, it was about the people who made it special. The guard smiled warmly at Liam, seeing the understanding in his eyes. "So remember, Liam," the guard said, "the palace isn't just a place where kings and queens live. It's a place where kindness lives, and it's a place where everyone, even you, can feel like they belong." Liam smiled back, his heart full. "Thank you for the story," he said, his voice sincere. "I like it here. I feel like I belong." The guard stood up, his posture straight as always. "I'm glad to hear that," he said with a smile. "And remember, you're always welcome here." As the guard walked away, Liam turned to his parents, his face glowing with happiness. "Did you hear that, Mom? Dad? I belong here. This is my palace, too." Maria and David exchanged a proud smile, their hearts swelling with love for their son. Today had been more than just a visit to a royal palace. It had been a lesson in kindness, belonging, and finding one's place in the world. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the royal gardens felt even more magical. The air had cooled slightly, and the soft breeze carried the scent of the flowers, mixing with the sound of the distant fountain. Liam sat on the stone bench, feeling more at home than he had ever felt before. The peacefulness of the gardens, combined with the kindness of the royal staff, had made this day one he would never forget. His parents, still sitting beside him, shared a quiet smile. Maria glanced at David, her eyes filled with appreciation. They had worried so much about how Liam would adjust to such a grand and formal place. But now, seeing him so relaxed and happy, they felt a deep sense of relief. They had never expected that a day at the royal palace could bring so much joy to their son. The kindness from the royal guards, the soft atmosphere of the palace, and the beauty of the gardens had created a perfect experience for Liam. David was lost in thought as he looked around. He had always admired the palace from afar, but never imagined that he and his family would be welcomed inside. Now they had been given a glimpse into a world of kindness and warmth, a world that seemed so different from the one he had known. And it wasn't just the grand architecture or the regal surroundings that made the day special. It was the people, the way everyone treated Liam with such care and respect. He had seen Liam grow in ways he hadn't expected, and it filled him with a sense of pride. Liam, meanwhile, was still processing everything that had happened. He had never thought that a day at the royal palace would be so fulfilling. He had imagined that he would be out of place, overwhelmed by the formality of it all. But instead, he had felt welcomed, not just by his parents, but by the guards, the attendants, and everyone around him. It was as if he had stepped into a world where kindness was the most important thing, where he was valued not for what he could do, but for who he was. As he sat there, thinking about the day, the royal guard who had shared the story with him earlier returned. This time, the guard was not alone. He was accompanied by another royal figure, someone who wore a crown and a long flowing robe. It was the Queen herself, and she was walking toward them with a warm, welcoming smile. Liam's heart skipped a beat when he saw her. He had never imagined he would be in the presence of someone so important, someone so regal. But there she was, walking toward him with the same kindness that everyone else had shown. The Queen's presence seemed to light up the gardens even more. Her smile was gentle, and there was a warmth in her eyes that made Liam feel at ease, despite her royal attire. When she reached them, she stopped and bowed her head slightly, acknowledging them with a grace that only someone of her stature could possess. "Good evening," she said, her voice soft but full of warmth. "It's a pleasure to see you all enjoying the gardens." Liam's parents stood up in respect, but the Queen waved them back down. "Please, don't stand on ceremony," she said kindly. "We are all guests in this beautiful space." Liam's eyes widened as the Queen looked directly at him. There was no sense of distance or formality in her gaze. Instead, she looked at him as if he were an old friend. "I hope you've been enjoying your visit to our palace," she said with a smile. "It's a place for everyone to feel at home." Liam, still in awe of her presence, nodded eagerly. "I've had the best day ever," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "I never thought I'd get to visit a place like this." The Queen's smile grew even brighter. "I'm so glad to hear that," she said warmly. "You know, this palace was built to bring people together, no matter who they are. It's not just a place for royalty, but for all who believe in kindness and unity." Liam felt a surge of happiness as he listened to her words. The palace, which he had once thought of as a far-off world of kings and queens, was now a place he felt connected to, a place where everyone mattered. The Queen's words echoed the message he had heard throughout the day. that kindness and inclusion were the heart of this place. The queen continued, her voice gentle and thoughtful. "You have shown such courage today, Liam," she said, her eyes shining with appreciation. "And it is that courage, that willingness to be open to new experiences, that makes you special." Liam blushed slightly at the queen's praise, feeling both proud and humble at the same time. He had never thought of himself as particularly brave, but hearing the queen say those words made him feel stronger, more capable. For the first time, he truly felt that he had something important to offer the world, not because of what he had done, but because of who he was. Maria and David exchanged looks, their hearts full. They had always known that Liam was special, but to hear the queen herself say it, with such kindness and sincerity, made them feel like their son was truly a part of something greater than they had ever imagined. The queen, sensing the moment was special, smiled once more. "I'm glad you've had a good experience here, Liam. Remember, this palace is always open to you, as it is to everyone. And I hope you carry the kindness you felt here with you wherever you go." Liam smiled, feeling a sense of warmth spread through him. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will." With a final smile, the queen and the royal guard took their leave, walking slowly back toward the palace. Liam, his heart still full, turned to his parents. "Mom, Dad," he said, his voice full of excitement. "This place is amazing. I feel like I'm a part of it, like I'm really here and I matter." Maria and David smiled at their son, their hearts swelling with pride and love. They had come to the palace unsure of what the day would bring, but now they could see that it had been a day of growth for Liam. A day where he had learned that kindness, inclusion, and love were the most important things in any place, no matter how grand or distant it seemed. As they left the gardens and made their way back toward the palace doors, Liam felt a sense of peace and belonging he had never experienced before. The royal palace, with all its grandeur, had shown him something more important than any building or decoration. It had shown him the power of kindness and acceptance, and that was something he would carry with him for the rest of his life. As the evening drew to a close, the family made their way back through the palace, the last remnants of sunlight casting a soft glow on the grand hallways. The day had been filled with so many unexpected moments of joy and connection that it felt as though they were leaving a different world than the one they had arrived in that morning. Liam, who had initially been nervous and uncertain about the royal palace, now felt like he had belonged there all along. He had not only seen the beauty and grandeur of the place, but he had also experienced the kindness and warmth that made the palace so much more than just a building. Maria and David walked closely behind Liam, both reflecting on how much their son had grown throughout the day. They had come to the palace with doubts and worries, unsure of how Liam would react to such a formal and unfamiliar environment. But the way the royal staff had treated him, the care and attention he had received from the guards, and the kindness of the queen herself had changed everything. Liam had blossomed in this new environment. He had been welcomed, seen, and heard in a way that made him feel valued. It was something they had never expected, but it had made the entire experience unforgettable. The palace doors loomed ahead, and Liam paused for a moment to look back at the beautiful gardens, now bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. It felt as if the gardens had become a part of him, a place where he had discovered something new about himself. The tranquility of the space had given him the chance to reflect, to feel at peace, and to connect with the world in a way he hadn't before. It was a feeling that stayed with him even as they moved away from the gardens and into the more formal parts of the palace. "Are we really leaving?" Liam asked, his voice a little hesitant. The excitement of the day had faded into a sense of contentment, and he wasn't quite ready to say goodbye to this place that had made him feel so important, so special. Maria smiled softly, her heart full. "Yes, sweetheart. But you know, this doesn't have to be goodbye forever. The kindness you felt here, the way people have treated you, is something you can carry with you wherever you go." David nodded in agreement. "This place has taught us all something today. It's not about the palace or the royal family. It's about the kindness and warmth we show each other. And that's something you can always take with you. Liam turned his gaze to his parents, his eyes shining with understanding. I get it now, he said, his voice thoughtful. It's not just about being here. It's about how we treat people, right? Maria's heart swelled with pride as she heard the wisdom in his words. Exactly, Liam. That's what makes this day so special. You've learned something that will stay with you for the rest of your life. As they walked through the grand hallways toward the exit, they were once again greeted by the royal guards, who stood at attention as they passed. This time, however, their demeanor was different. There was no formality or distance between them and the family. Instead, they smiled warmly, nodding as the family made their way out of the palace. Liam, feeling a little bolder now, waved at one of the guards. "Thank you," he said with a smile. "You made my day really special." The guard smiled back, his face lighting up with appreciation. "It was our pleasure, young man. You brought a lot of joy to this place today." Liam beamed at the compliment, his heart swelling with happiness. He felt like he had made a difference, even in the smallest way, and it was a feeling he would cherish forever. As they stepped outside the palace gates, the night sky stretched out above them, filled with stars. The cool evening air was refreshing, and the soft sounds of the city began to reach their ears. But for Liam and his family, the day at the palace was still fresh in their minds. It felt like they had experienced something truly extraordinary, a day that had started with uncertainty and ended with a deep sense of fulfillment. On the way home, as they sat together in the carriage, Liam leaned against his mother, his head resting gently on her shoulder. He was tired from all the excitement of the day, but there was a peacefulness in his demeanor that hadn't been there when the day had first begun. Maria smiled down at him, gently stroking his hair. "What was your favorite part of the day?" she asked softly. Liam thought for a moment, his eyes still reflecting the wonder of the palace. "I think it was when the Queen talked to me," he said quietly. "She made me feel like I really belonged." David, who had been gazing out of the carriage window, turned to look at Liam. "You do belong, Liam," he said with a smile. "You belong in every place that welcomes you with kindness, and that includes the palace, your home, and everywhere you go." Liam nodded, a small but genuine smile spreading across his face. "I think I understand now. It's not about where we are, but about how we make people feel." His parents shared a knowing glance. They had always believed that kindness was the key to understanding the world, and today, Liam had seen that for himself. The rest of the ride home was filled with quiet conversation and soft laughter. The family reflected on the events of the day, each one of them carrying something precious with them. For Liam, it was the lesson that kindness and inclusion were what truly made a place feel like home. For Maria and David, it was the deep satisfaction of knowing that their son had been given a gift, a reminder that no matter where he went, he would always find a way to bring light and warmth to the world around him. By the time they reached their home, the stars were shining brightly in the sky, and the night felt peaceful. As they stepped out of the carriage and into the warmth of their house, Liam felt something inside him that he had never felt before, a quiet confidence, a sense of belonging, and a heart full of gratitude. The royal palace had shown him more than just its grandeur. It had shown him the power of kindness and the importance of being true to who you are. It had been a day he would never forget, and as he lay down to sleep that night, he knew that he would carry the lessons he had learned with him for the rest of his life.